Welcome to Getting and Keeping Students Connected and Engaged in an Online Classroom. My name is Katie Gallagher, and I'm the Director of Product Marketing for Teaching and Learning K-12 at Blackboard. I'll be serving as the moderator for the K-12 Blackboard Innovative Teaching Series this fall. Thank you to Jenny Breister from our K-12 field marketing team who will be helping answer questions and manage attendance in the chat today. She wants to be sure everybody receives the follow-up from the session, so she may be reaching out to you to get more information. We will be joining you for the series this fall, and we're always open to new ideas and topics for the series as we plan the spring session. So just send us an email or a tweet if you would like to present in the future or there's a topic you'd like to see. Each webinar in this series is recorded, including today. You can search for the K-12 Blackboard Innovative Teaching Series playlist on the Blackboard TV YouTube channel, or simply go to tinyurl.com/bitsk12 for all the sessions in the series. You'll be receiving a follow-up in about 2 weeks with links to all the recordings in the fall series as well. In addition, you'll be receiving an invitation to participate in a professional learning community in our new Blackboard community site. We're very excited to move the K-12 Blackboard Innovative Teaching Series professional learning community from course sites to our new community site. This PLC is designed to augment the series and create an avenue for ongoing collaboration and dialogue. So please accept this invitation and participate in the new online PLC. And I think Jenny put the link to the online PLC in the chat there. Thank you, Jenny. We have a few more great sessions lined up before the holiday break. Join us again this Friday at noon. Tyler Foraker from our K-12 Solutions Engineering team will be introducing us to tracking student progress within Blackboard Learn. And then next Monday, Laura Hodges from IDLA will be sharing what it's like to go mobile with the new Blackboard Collaborate and Chromebooks. So we're really excited for that session. Then we've got Misty Cobb that Friday and Danny Timmons from Learn 21 the following Monday. We're super happy to have Jenny Day from the North Carolina Virtual Public School with us today. Jenny's been teaching for 18 years and has 5 years of online teaching experience with NCVPS as a teacher and course developer, and most recently the past 2 years as an instructional leader. In addition to receiving an amazing education in rural North Carolina high school, she's a proud East Carolina University graduate. She's nationally board certified and renewed in AYA and science, and she achieved AIG certification through an online program with the University of Virginia. So welcome, Jenny. Thank you for sharing your time and expertise with us today. With that, I'll hand it over to you.
Well, thank you, and thank you everyone for joining us today. Can you hear me okay?
You sound great.
Wonderful. Well, I appreciate so much you guys coming out, and I appreciate that introduction as well. Thank you so much. So today we're talking about getting and keeping students connected and engaged in an online class, which is a subject near and dear to my heart as an online teacher, because I think that the heart of any educational experience is a connection. And so I'd love to share with you guys some of the things that I've learned as an online teacher, some of the things I've learned through my failures as an online teacher, because I think we learn a lot from that as well. And I'm going to be incorporating some tools from Blackboard and Moodle and how I use those specifically to get and keep students connected and engaged. And I hope that all of you will feel free to jump in at any time with feedback or questions or your own strategies, because it will only make this session stronger. So as you have just heard, I have been teaching for quite a while. and I love teaching. So why should you stick around for the presentation? We just talked about what it's going to be, and I'm going to focus really on practical strategies for what I think is one of the most troubling issues, which is student engagement. And we're going to try to be very real in our talk about how to set up a system that might help to keep students engaged and connected. If you would like, my Twitter name handle is at Mrs. Day NCVPS. I would love to see you there. If you are a Twitter person, Twitter teacher, my email is also listed there. So let's start with a bit of a chat. What does student engagement mean to you? If you could please just type into the chat a word or a phrase. When you think about student engagement, what comes to your mind? And I'll give you just a few seconds to do that. I love some of the things we're seeing. Glenn says all students interacting on the whiteboard at the same time. I see Crystal with actively listening and participating. Amy, participate actively. And I'm noticing a word that's popping up a lot, or really two of them, active and interact, which also has act in it. I see their attention level and interest, very, very important. Eager to learn more, love that, Hildy, so important. And another, actively participating, active, active, active. So engagement seems to mean to us a great deal about how active a student is in the course, how active they are with the content. And those are definitely things that we're going to focus on. And talking about interest, I've given you here the definition of engagement from the Education Forum site, and you can see they also focus on attention and curiosity and interest. So the question then becomes, how do we help that process? How do we, as a teacher, an online teacher in particular, how do we track it? What point do we consider a student engaged in our class? How do we know? We can't see their face. We don't know for sure exactly what's going through their mind on a daily basis, perhaps. So how can we work to get them engaged? Well, when we talk about engaged, for just this session at least, we want to kind of mean that we are lifting them up from that rote kind of literacy that a lot of our successful students may be able to do and earn really good grades, and more into the analytical, critical frame of mind. So let's see, do you agree or disagree with that? Do you think that engaged means to move beyond the sophisticated, even if a student's doing really well in the class? Let's do a quick poll. You can type yes or no there. I see some agree, very much. Excellent. Oh, wonderful. Okay, very good. Candace, love that you felt free to agree partially. I agree that sometimes moving beyond that requires that you have mastered some rote skills, if you will, some basic definitions perhaps. But I think that we all, as teachers, never want to stay there. So we want to move beyond what we know as the base level and get students operating higher. And you're right, sometimes we make the mistake to try to jump right into it. And that can also work against engagement, because sometimes when we try to go to what we feel is a higher level without making sure that there's proper support there, then we're setting our students up to fail, and we'll see disengagement as a result. So that was important. Here are some things that help you spot engagement in an online class particularly. So these are some things that, as I'm looking at each student individually, asking myself, is this student engaged? And if they are not, how can I help them? These are some things to look for. Is that student logging into class often? Are they submitting work on time? So these are all very much basic practices, but they are reflective of engagement as well. Are they reacting to the learning in some way? That one's key for me, and I'll talk about that in a little bit when I get to feedback. Are they asking questions? If a student is never asking questions, they are either not engaged in the content, or I have not engaged them as a teacher, and perhaps they're asking questions of other people. And in some ways, that's okay. It's not that I have to be the source that they come to all the time, but it's definitely something I want to follow up and make sure that they are being engaged. Are they responding to feedback, interacting with other students? So all that you talked about before when you were thinking about active, you can see those reflected here. Yes, questions absolutely, Glenn, need to be posed. So right now, can you think of a learner who represents an engaged learner? Maybe someone you're teaching currently, someone that you taught in a previous experience, someone that another teacher has described to you. And can you then alternately think of a learner who represents a disengaged student? Because I think putting a face to those two terms sometimes helps us think our way through strategies to get all of our students engaged. Would anyone, great. I think we've all been there. I think that even probably most of us have been successful in most of our classes, although certainly there are lots of teachers out there who didn't even like school. But I think we've all experienced both of those things in our own learning. All right, so what are the benefits? Why do we really want students to be engaged? And I love that, Barbara, you're right. Sometimes asking the right questions is great. Student engagement is not just a predictor of learning, which is, of course, to us very valuable. It is also a great predictor of personal development. So helping our students get engaged in a class, whether it's a class that they particularly liked in the beginning, is going to help them in their own personal development. It's going to increase their success. It's going to help them learn persistence, which we all know is incredibly valuable in all future learning opportunities. And in some research, they determined that test scores measuring conceptual understanding were twice as high in classes that promoted student engagement. So even if not all students are engaged necessarily every day in every way, setting up your class to promote engagement will benefit your students. And here is a really scary statistic to me. In the early grades, 8 of 10 students are engaged, but by middle school, the number 6 of 10, and then in high school, 4 of 10. How many of you teach high school students or higher? See a hand? Okay, so I do as well, and that statistic to me wasn't surprising. Are any of you surprised by that? Is anybody like, wow, I really thought there'd be more? Yes, so I think that we're all aware that that happens, that we're all aware. I have 3 children of my own. They're very young. They love school. But by high school, we see a lot of students who do not. So this has become a subject near and dear to my heart because not only do I want the best for my school students, but I look at my 3 young children of my own and I don't want them to become less and less engaged as time goes on. So I really started to think about this specifically and intentionally in my online class. How can I get students engaged? And a lot of these conclusions are no shockers. This is, very, like I said, very practical. And I put them together with an acronym here, I engage. So this is an overview. We're going to talk about some tools to do each of these. But I also have this, if you, you'll get, I'll put a link in for the whole presentation at the end. But if you like this acronym and you want to steal it, feel free. There is the link right there in the chat. I engage. So I invite students into the class, even though it's virtual, and onward. I try to elevate communication to conversation. Conversation has been a real touchstone word with me now for a couple of years. I try to navigate learning with formative assessments. I believe they're so very valuable. I try to get to know the student and go beyond that to show the student, hey, I know about you as a person. I'm interested in learning about you as a person. I try to anticipate trouble spots because sometimes an obstacle is a great thing to help us over, but sometimes an obstacle didn't need to be there. And it's really just a roadblock slowing us down, like a roadblock in the middle of the highway. So we want to remove obstacles that are just slowing us down for no purpose. I want to grow my students through my feedback. I don't want to just offer them a grade. I want to make sure my feedback is giving them something, watering them, nurturing them, and getting them to grow and go forward. And I want to extend content, whatever I happen to be teaching at the time, and I've taught a lot of different subjects in my many years, into their world. I love some of the things that you're putting here, Barbara, in the chat. I think that those are all great points. Teacher enthusiasm is crucial to a student's engagement often. So look, just a little bit. I'm not going to smother you with research, but I want to put this out here to let you know it's not just my voice standing alone calling these things out. Students want stronger relationships with teachers, and I give you the links to this research in a little bit. They want stronger relationships. They may not admit that. Those of us who teach high school know that sometimes our students want to be too cool for school, but they do want that. Want their teachers to know them as people. It's important, especially in today's environment, to not just be a number, not just to be another anonymous user somewhere out in the universe. They want their teachers to know how they learn, to take into account what they understand, and to establish learning environments that promote learning. So here's the practical. How can we do that? The I engage first invite students in. A student might wonder, is my teacher human? I've had online students before who thought that it was just a computer grading everything. They were shocked to discover that I actually look at their work and make comments and give them feedback and relate back to them. I don't know if any of you have had that same experience, but they don't always know right away that this is going to be very much like a face-to-face class. And first impressions count. It counts a lot. How can we set up an environment that invites dialogue and conversation? And you really need to think about that. I encourage everyone before, if you're teaching an online class, before your students are coming into class, before it's made available to them, that you go in as a student would and you look at it from a student's eyes and look and see, do I immediately know what my teacher looks like? Is their profile picture? Do I know how to contact my teacher? Does this look inviting? And if it doesn't, is there anything I can do to make it more inviting? Part of my job as an instructional leader is to evaluate other teachers. And I love to steal ideas from them to share with everybody else. And a really effective strategy that one of my teachers used was he made videos of himself just in his normal everyday life talking about we teach science in my particular, talking about different science concepts and posted them in his course. The students loved it. They loved seeing him walking around, cooking dinner and talking. And maybe that's not your thing, and certainly you shouldn't do it if that isn't something you feel comfortable doing. But sharing a little of yourself in a professional way makes a huge difference. And I love what Glenn put there too. And yes, Grace, I understand project-based learning and teaching is often very active and loud, and that's great. So add face and voice where possible. We have lots of options to do that in the online classroom, lots of apps that allow us to do that. And right there within the course, if you are a Moodle teacher, for example, there's voice authoring. And you can read every direction out loud so they're hearing your voice if they choose. You can add coaching screencasts. You can reach out personally. That's very important. At NCVPS, where I teach, we are expected to reach out by phone to every single family before class begins. We call it Meet Your Teacher. And I can't tell you how many parents I've talked to who were just blown away. Wow, you called us directly, and that set up a wonderful conversation about the student's needs as well as a line of communication in case there were future issues. It takes a long time, but it's very, very valuable. And setting up an introduction forum, Amy just referenced that, showing some photos of her or students in the class. Yes, absolutely. Letting them see each other as people, that's important. We need to build community because these kids live and breathe community. And they are very, very adept at building an online community because they're used to social media. So finding ways to mimic that in the safe environment of an online course, like setting up a discussion board or a forum where they can post things about themselves that you are moderating to make sure they're appropriate and that they are safe to share, is a wonderful way. I teach forensics this semester, and so I had my students do an introductory activity where they had to post 5 clues about themselves, and other students had to take those clues and try to build a conclusion from them. And they loved that activity because it got them introduced to each other in a unique way. So the next part kind of builds off of that. Once you have that introduction done, keep the conversation going. We talk a lot about online communication with students, and I've kind of grown weary of that word. I like to think about communication as a conversation. I don't know if that resonates with you, but when I think of a conversation, what do you think of? When you think of conversation, how is that different from communication? Somebody type in the chat. How is conversation different from communication? Absolutely. Absolutely. Amy and April, Peta, all of you absolutely are saying exactly what I think of. When I think of conversation, it's two-way, it's back and forth, it's personal, it's ongoing. There's a change, there's listening. So whenever I'm communicating with students, I always filter it now through the idea of, is this a communication or is this an invitation to a conversation? Let me give you an example. This morning I sent a text to all of my students, and I started the text with, "Hey, exclamation mark, I hope you had a great break," because we just had a 5-day break from class. So I hope you had a great break. We're getting ready to dive into Module 10, which is all about fibers. What fiber represents you? Text me back. Okay, so I just sent it out. It was kind of chatty, which maybe isn't your thing, but I wanted to open up the conversation. I wanted to ask them a question at the end so they could respond to me. I wanted to make it something they could answer without having yet done the notes, but something that was related to the notes, because my follow-up was going to be very content specific. Have you started Module 10? Do you have questions? And kind of looping back to that content. And it's so important as an online teacher, if you are truly genuine about wanting a conversation, to respond when they respond to you. So don't just let their text lie there in the inbox of your Google Voice account if you have such a thing. I always try to make sure they know I've seen it and I'm responding, and I always end with a question so that they know that I'm interested in continuing to talk. And don't worry, they'll stop texting you when they're done talking to you. Absolutely, you could. I'm reading some of the chat here, offering text and email as a bridge. I think both of those are great avenues. Of course, Blackboard has Blackboard messaging, Blackboard IM. We have Blackboard Collaborate. In Moodle, you've got Moodle messaging. So there's lots and lots and lots of options. And you're right, Barbara, it's important to make sure questions are respectful, but I think it's also important to open that door so I can coach them to be respectful. I think it's important to make sure they have opportunities to practice that in my classroom. Make sure that your tone is encouraging. Kids will shut down if they don't know you as a person and they think you're mad at them. So I always try to read what I'm going to send to them quickly before I press that send button the final time, because I want to make sure it sounds happy or helpful or encouraging or coaching. Sometimes I have to deliver a bad message. Sometimes I have to say, "Hey, Emily, your submission was Diana's submission, and she turned hers in last Wednesday. I'm going to need you to rework your submission because they're too similar," or whatever it happens to be. And I tell you, emoticons, I used to laugh at people who put smiley faces all the time, but students really respond to emoticons. That gives them a face, that gives them the knowledge that you're smiling as you're saying this. Holding town hall style meetings with Blackboard Collaborate or another virtual classroom helps to get everyone talking. All right, so some tools to help make. When you are looking at the gradebook, you can track their progress. You can track their participation. I like to reach out at the midpoint of a module using things like the performance dashboard or logs in Moodle if I see a student who has started to fall behind. I've noticed if I wait to the end, this was one of those failures that I learned from. If I waited until the module was closed and I had added zeros, I didn't get as big a response as if I reached down in the middle and said, hey, I noticed that you're behind. And I always try to use their name. So if I said, hey, Barbara, I noticed you're behind in this module. What's going on? Are you having trouble? Are there questions about things? And really reaching out to them. I like to pursue the conversation with my students and not wait for them to come to me with questions. And I love that we have tools that allow us to do that. Moderating discussion boards is super important as well. They know you're reading them and listening and thinking about it. And then if you see your students on Blackboard IM or Google Hangouts, things like that, checking in with them is great. Something I've started doing that's been super helpful to me is I did a student survey at the beginning, and I also read through their intro forums, their discussion board at the very beginning with the clues, and I just made a quick list. So I have a list of students who listed some sort of sport as one of their interests, and I have a list of students who listed a video game as one of their interests. And when I see in an opportunity in a lesson or a chat, I'll send them a quick note, a quick text or a message, and I'll say, hey, we're getting ready to learn about soil cultures, and you play an outdoor sport. Think about how important the ground is to your sport and how that might leave traces in your shoes or something along those lines to help bring the content alive. Wow, I'm pressing next slide. There we go. It's not going yet.
It looks like it advanced to me.
Okay, I am stuck on 3 right now. What number are you seeing?
I'm on slide 20.
Oh, there we go. It went for me. Yep, it went for me. Thank you.
Right.
So are you on incorporating the LMS? Oh, perfect. Thank you.
Yes.
So thank you so much. Here are some quick little ideas for Blackboard and Moodle, depending, I don't know how many of you teach in both or a combination or one or the other, but here are some things that both of those offer that you can use to help build communication with your students. Take a quick look at those. Has anyone used any of these and would like to give it a shout out as an effective tool? Barbara, you said yes. Which one of these have you used? Give Barbara a chance to answer that if she chooses. If you haven't used these particular tools, I encourage you to do so. There are some really great tools that will help us build communication. We've talked about discussion boards. Amy, thank you so much. And Moodle using Teacher Block. Becky, you're in Canvas. My school's moving to Canvas courses for many of our courses in the spring, so that's certainly something that has a lot of similar tools. Okay, so Blackboard, the gradebook, you can message students directly from the gradebook to highlight the feedback. We use Blackboard Collaborate and IM a lot in my work. We have our office hours in Blackboard IM. So it's a wonderful tool that students can just hop on and instant message you. I see someone's drawing on there. That's fabulous. Announcements in Blackboard, or you can set up an announcement forum in Moodle to kind of mimic that same idea. We have in my school, we do in each announcement an instruct, an inform, and an celebrate component. So we're always giving students a resource to use for the lesson that day, and we're celebrating a student achievement in class and letting them know about deadlines and things like that. And it's very effective at helping keep them involved in class, knowing what's going on and what they're supposed to be doing. All right, well, let's move to instructional decisions. Research suggests that considering the following elements when we are designing our learning activities can increase engagement. Making each meaningful, fostering a sense of efficacy, making sure the students can do, like we talked about earlier, not jumping straight to that high level without a Uh-oh, I got kicked out for a minute. Sorry about that. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep, you sound great.
Okay, thank you. It was such a polite message too. It just said, "You've been disconnected." Wonderful. Thank you guys for waiting for me to hop back on. Embracing collaborative learning and establishing positive relationships and promoting mastery orientation. So how do we do that? What are some practical strategies? Formative assessments for me have become very important. Assessing before you test. I want to make that goes back to me to many of those things that we just looked at, including efficacy. I need to know where they are before they get started on a mastery assignment. So I try to build informative assessments to announcements, straight to the course, anywhere that I can to see if my student, even in my texts out to students, I'll just ask a probing question. It can be that simple. Hey guys, today we're learning about evidence left in an arson. Did you understand the pattern of smoke and what it suggests, or something like that? And then I follow up on that and offer them resources as it's needed. Using adaptive releases in Moodle and Blackboard, or Moodle has personalized learning designer to set up different paths for those, is a best practice that can allow students to really feel like this course is being tailored to them. Yes, ma'am.
Sorry, just a quick introduction there. The personalized learning designer, for those of you using Moodle, is part of Blackboard's product Moodle Rooms. It's actually not part of core Moodle. I just wanted to add that clarification just in case anybody's just using plain Moodle. NCVPS uses the Moodle Rooms product, a variation of Moodle with enhancements from Blackboard.
Yes, thank you. You're right. I was not aware that that was separate, but you're absolutely right. We do use Moodle Rooms as opposed to just core Moodle. Um, and then analyzing data to inform your announcements really helps to let them know that you're paying attention to what's going on and you're there to support them. And then make getting help easy. Anxiety does not lend itself to learning. So if we can anticipate trouble areas and then go ahead and have that support ready and waiting for an online student so they don't have to wait for us to come back online, that's key to keeping them engaged, because they can keep moving forward in that kind of anytime learning model. So posting the communication information gives them access to you, and then of course making sure that you are answering their questions as quickly and thoroughly and positively as you can. But then you can also add in things like an assignment help discussion board or forum that can even be moderated by peer tutors if you edit their topic role in a Blackboard discussion board. Or you can use and advertise and encourage Collaborate and BBIM for office hours, like I mentioned earlier. We set up an announcement forum, and of course, in Blackboard, you have the announcements right there on the front page, where we put in, like I said, an informed section every day that students can go back and they can reference, just looking at the titles to find a great resource for the topic that they're learning about. So those are some things that give them these help resources that make getting help easy so they can keep moving forward. And then here is another topic near and dear to my heart, which is feedback. How many of you have ever received a grade with absolutely no explanation for why you got that grade and you weren't happy about it? Can I get a shout out? Yes. Oh, I think we all have. And I tell you, I was always, yes, absolutely. Thank you. Loretta, did you have a question, or were you just raising your hand to say yes? Okay, well, if she, hopefully Loretta pop in if you wanted to talk. So I was always one of those students that looked forward to seeing some sort of comment written on my paper, and if I could see several comments throughout the paper, I was even more excited. I wanted to know that my teacher had read the work, that they had thought about the work, that they were giving me feedback, and I didn't just want positive, I wanted to know how I could change it and grow. And it is to me, one of the most important conversations, not just communications, that we have with the student. And when I think about feedback, that's what I think about. I want this to be a conversation with my students. So I'm going to start with giving them feedback. And we know in Moodle Rooms and in Blackboard, there's lots of different ways to do that. But both in Moodle Rooms, which is what I'm using right now, as Katie pointed out earlier, in Moodle Rooms, one of the great things is that when they post a comment to my feedback, I can see it as a message and then I can respond to it, and it's right there with the assignment. And I have loved having that. And those of you, somebody mentioned Canvas, I think it's there too. And the wonderful thing is we keep going back and forth, and I think it's great because they've read what I wrote and then they're like, okay, well, and then how does that relate back to this? Oh, okay, well then, and we just keep on going. So giving them that kind of feedback really keeps them engaged in the core content of your course. Grading promptly is important because students are interested in what they've done on that assignment, but that only extends for a period of time, and then they begin to get anxious instead of interested. I'm sure you've seen some students kind of move past the I really want to know to the oh no, something must be wrong. Start with the student's name if you can, end with a prompt or question, like I said, to keep the feedback moving toward conversation. And then if you can, link it to real world or student interests within the feedback, especially if you can specialize it for them, tailor it to their interest. It's so powerful. It's so incredibly powerful. And this all comes back to getting to know them as a person and using the tools that we have in our course to do that, to set up the discussion boards, to keep the communication elevated to conversation. And then now we're continuing that with feedback about the work. So these things all go hand in hand. And one of the things that I've started doing, because we talk about failures as a teacher, I noticed that I'm giving them this feedback. I don't know if they're even looking at it. And of course, I want them to get the most out of it that they can. And so I've started an opportunity for my students to earn a free late work pass by keeping a feedback journal. So they actually go through and they pick out feedback from each module, they respond to it. And then, as they're doing that, I'm giving them something that can allow them to turn in work late, which I know lots of people have different opinions about rewarding them to do successful habits, but I really wanted them to get into that feedback, and I've seen lots of great return on that investment. And yes, y'all are mentioning rubrics. Absolutely, rubrics are great at allowing them to self-assess and then giving you these very specific characteristics to talk about in your feedback. Keeping content connected, we've talked about several times, so I won't spend too much time here. We've talked about linking to real world connections. As an online teacher, this is really easy for me. I can grab a news article. I can even do a search for my particular state, or even better, I only have students in my state, but I will often connect it to that student's region and say, hey, such and such, you're in Winston-Salem. Here's something in the news that I saw that relates to our content from Winston-Salem. And they love that. I had a student this morning, for example, whose name is Anna. We're talking about the Blanche because we were doing toxicology. And she said, my mom used to transcribe, and she transcribed that case one of the times it appeared in court. And she continued to have communication with Blanche Moore. And it was just fascinating for us to talk about that and really get into that content. And I knew she was engaged because she was reaching out to me, but I had to have all of the groundwork for that to happen, because if I hadn't have given her those lines of communication, she couldn't have reached out. And then here are some specific Blackboard and Moodle Rooms. And thank you so much again for pointing that out. I should have put Moodle Rooms in there earlier. But the Blackboard discussion boards and surveys for formative assessments, being able to go in as a student user, which you can do in student preview, or in Moodle's is just using the student role, using the performance or the Moodle reports. In Blackboard, you have needs grading, and Moodle Rooms, we have the Joule grader, or we use the recent activity block to keep things timely. And some of you mentioned rubrics. Blackboard, I noticed, have interactive rubrics. I don't know a ton about those. I haven't been to use. Nope, I love, thank you so much for doing that. And then in Moodle, being able to restrict access to build in checkpoints. But of course, that requires that we carefully monitor that. Yes, Glenn, I love Padlet too. There's so many tools out there that we can incorporate using the embed code into our courses and our announcements. Absolutely. I have a link to the presentation, and I'm sorry, I'm trying, and I also have a one-page handout that has some as well. Building a team. So in terms of student engagement, this doesn't have anything to do with the LMS at all, but you can certainly understand how important this is. When I was in the classroom as a high school teacher, I didn't talk a lot with parents. And maybe y'all don't have the same experience, but I noticed that I didn't talk a lot with parents when I was in the classroom. However, as an online teacher, we at NCVPS were directed to reach out to parents at least every other week. And at first I was like, oh, that's a lot, but I have come to really build a team around a student when you're connecting with their parents, when you're connecting with their school. It's unbelievable what can happen for your online students. It is very, very necessary. So make sure you're activating the school team, activating the home team, and then activating your teacher. Talk to other people who are teaching what you teach. What worked for you based on your performance dashboard, based on your gradebook? What was our average for that test? What question was missed the most often? There has never been a greater tool for data mining, and I mean real effective, not the kind where you have to meet on a Wednesday afternoon when everyone's tired, but actually digging in to do something very useful and helpful for your students than we have in our gradebook analytics. So using those and using those very intentionally for our students is so important. Now, some of you have been, and thank you so much for posting that. Yes, be sure to sign up in the community there. There's a recording link that you'll get, a PDF of the slides, and then I've also here given you some links in this presentation. So I got kicked off again, my goodness. Yes, you did lose me again, and I so wanted to stay, but here we have a direct link to the one-page summary. And I also have a direct link to the presentation as well, but those will all be posted. Like she said, you'll get some emails, but there they are. And here are the research sites that I used when I was trying to find research to kind of help me refine my own ideas that I have gathered through my years of teaching online. And we are now at the end of my presentation. And I so thank you for hanging out with me and tracking through that and participating. And once again, if you are on Twitter, there is my Twitter handle. I would love to stay in touch. And I will take questions now and turn it back over to Katie.
Oh, great. Yeah, that's exactly what I want to do. Just check for questions with the group. Thank you so much, Jenny. This has been a great presentation. What questions do we have, group?
I see there aren't too many questions. I did want to pop in an address to an email I made for one of the virtual connections. That's our teacher newsletter, where you can see some actual examples from my forensics course of how I use some of the things that we talked about today. So if you want to click on that link, then you can check out what some of these things might look
Awesome.
like.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, and I think we did handle a lot of questions throughout as well, so thank you. Great, thank you so much. So just as a reminder, we have another session this Friday with Tyler Foraker from our K-12 Solutions Engineering team, who will be focused on tracking student progress within Blackboard Learn. Next Monday, we also have another session. I am drawing a blank. Let me go back to the slide that listed our sessions, and I can actually just jump to the direct slide. I don't know why I am clicking one at a time. 1 second. There we go. All right, so on Monday, Valera Hodges from IDLA will be sharing going mobile with the new Blackboard Collaborate. There were a couple questions earlier with that, so we hope you can join us for that. But Jenny, this has been a great session, and we are wrapping up this fall schedule. So great engaging sessions today, and we really appreciate everyone joining. And we look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks, everyone.